Christian TV host Rick Wiles said this week that if Democrats win the midterm elections, they'll burn down churches and kill thousands of Christians. My only question is, are the drugs he's on legal in his state? Welcome to the FWOT Show. I'm Rob Steele, that's Jesus Jones in the background, and I'm going to do more of a serious show this week, not because I want to, but because it kind of needs to be done, against everyone's will. The midterm elections are coming up. Yay! Everyone get out and vote, because we need to. The thing is, you need to be careful about the voting process. There's a lot of things going wrong with our voting process. I'm going to focus on Georgia because that's where I live, but seriously, it's all over the country. I'll get to that in a minute. I'm really just going to look at the Georgia governor's race. Currently, Republican Brian Kemp, who is also the Secretary of State, is going against Stacey Abrams. She's a Democrat. He's a Republican. You can probably guess that because Brian Kemp is an extraordinarily pale white boy, and Stacey Abrams happens to have darker skin. Watch me not care what color their skin is, because I don't think that's the point. It has to do with honesty and qualifications. Now, honesty is something Brian Kemp seems to have a problem with because, well, as the Secretary of State, the guy who's in charge of the voting process itself, sketchy? Yeah, a little bit. Brian Kemp is blocking about 53,000 people from voting because, well, sometimes their voter registration card doesn't completely match up with their driver's license or their legal home of address, something like that. And I understand the concept of why that doesn't, it doesn't match up. Maybe there's something sketchy about it, but it's things like there's an apostrophe missing in the name. Well, I'm not sure why there's an apostrophe there in the first place, but there we go. Now it's missing, therefore they can't vote. You know what? That doesn't really matter. The point is 70% of those 53,000 people happen to be African American, just like Stacey Abrams. I find that sneaky and underhanded. And that would be great if you were, let's say, a villain in a cartoon. I mean, this is Wile E. Coyote level of sneakery, kind of like the things he puts out in his mailers. Now, he's trying to make them look legitimate. The problem is, he's not doing a very good job of it. One of the ads he puts out, in a mailer, it came to my house, has references, footnotes. You can look up where he got his information from. Now, one of the things he says that Stacey Abrams is going to do is lessen the penalty for people who assault police officers. Well, yes and no. I don't think it's a good idea for people to assault police officers in the first place, but the law in question, State Bill 160, is against having the death penalty for children as young as 13 committing crimes against police officers that shot at the kids first. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense to me. And yet he says that's a bad thing. Really? Why does he say that's a bad thing? I mean, if the cops shoot first at kids who are unarmed, well, he says law enforcement doesn't terrorize innocent families. Law enforcement just doesn't do things like that. Hello, have you heard of a guy named Colin Kaepernick? He's been in the news lately. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Now, in that same flyer, he also says that she's for sex offenders taking pictures of kids without parental consent. Except the reference for that is SB 160, which is that thing about the death penalty for kids as young as 13 committing crimes against police officers. What the hell does that have to do with sex offenders taking pictures of kids? Oh, wait, nothing. Honesty? No, there doesn't seem to be any of that here. Let's look at one of his other ads. How about the one that has pictures of Stacey Abrams hanging out with her buddies, Bernie Sanders, Nancy Pelosi, and Hillary Clinton? And it has the Friends logo from NBC on it. Copyright infringement, lawsuit. Can I see that coming, please, NBC? Hello? No, that's probably not going to happen. But the picture, the word Photoshop comes to mind because that's how it's done. It also says you have to vote no for Stacey Abrams because otherwise her liberal friends are going to come in and take over. Bernie Sanders is not coming to Georgia to take it over. Nancy Pelosi, not coming to Georgia to take it over. Hillary Clinton is not even in politics at the moment. It's put there to scare people because people think Hillary is scary, a woman in power. And Nancy Pelosi's a woman in power too. And Bernie Sanders, he's an old white guy. I don't see what the problem they have with him is. I'm just saying. Now, there is one that does actually almost make sense. Almost. They did get her in this. Oh, nailed her on this one. It says liberal Stacey Abrams didn't pay her taxes, but she wants to raise yours. Well, not entirely true. She does owe the IRS money because there was this thing with her student loan that was very confusing and didn't make a lot of sense and caught a lot of people off guard. So they owe the IRS money on the interest on their student loans, and that's who's getting the money in the first place. So they just want more of your money, and it keeps piling up. And here's the thing, she was against that in the first place because it's sneaky and underhanded. And let's face it, 75,000% on student loans is asinine. And I think it's close to that. It's awfully, I'm exaggerating, but it's close. It's ridiculous. Now, let us look a little bit at Brian Kemp. Now, I was disappointed because I saw the signs for Kemp. And I thought, Sean Kemp, he was my favorite player in the NBA for it. It's not him. Well, how about Matt Kemp, the outfielder for San Diego? No, it's not him either. It's Brian Kemp, who is not related to either of them. He has actually been quoted as saying he's worried they'll lose the election if everyone exercises the right to vote, which is why he cut the people in the first place. You know, the Secretary of State, putting him in charge of voting is kind of like putting someone in charge of education who doesn't believe in public education, or someone in charge of the Environmental Protection Agency who doesn't believe in global climate change. Oh, wait, Trump did that. But Brian Kemp is also very anti-immigrant, even though, that's what this country is made up from, unless, you happen to have kind of a reddish skin tone, and somewhere you might have a headdress with feathers. Otherwise, you're a f***ing immigrant. Wake up. How can you not know that? Have immigrants in your background, and there's a caravan of immigrants on their way. You know what? They're not terrorists. You know why they're not terrorists? Because unlike what the vice president thinks, the best way to get to the United States from the Middle East is not to take a flight from Baghdad to Germany to somewhere south of Mexico and then walk the rest of the way. Are you kidding me? Really? That's not the way it works. But meanwhile, back at Brian Kemp, who is just, this guy, really? During his time as Secretary of State, his office ignored 96% of sexual assault claims. That's 2015 to now. Source, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, an extraordinarily reputable newspaper, who also said that they have found Georgia nurses who say that the Secretary of State is putting patients at risk because he doesn't believe in health insurance for anybody, apparently at any price. So he's for the death penalty? No, can't have. What? How did you get in this position? You don't know what you're doing. Proof? CNN announced back in August, 6 million Georgia voters' records have been exposed and could have easily been compromised because he did it. And he wants a promotion and a raise. And no, that's not going to happen in this state. We can't let that happen. Now, I know a lot of you are listening from somewhere that's not Georgia and going, dude, Georgia's f***ed. We are. And there's not a whole lot we can do about that, except vote. Get out and do it. But it's not just Georgia where this is happening. In Florida, 27,000 people who are supposed to be registering to vote can't. Their registrations have been put on hold. South Carolina, they've reduced the number of polling places by 20%, making it harder for people to vote. Texas rejected thousands of online registrations. 70,000. Nope, can't be registered to vote in North Dakota because, well, their voter ID laws became much more weird. You have to have like a driver's license and 3 or 4 other forms of... I don't have 3 or 4 other forms of identification. And birth certificates are not identification. I can print a piece of paper saying I was born anywhere. There's no fingerprints. There's no social security. It's got my name on it. I can make those. Why is that? Anyway, moving on. Other states, Nevada, 90,000 voters. 90,000 voters. Moved to the inactive status. That's not even the big one. Indiana, 469,000 people had their registrations canceled. That's a fifth of the state had their And let's see, what do all these states have in common? Could it be Republicans or Satan or both? If you go back to that priest who thinks that if the Democrats win, look out for your church. Hang on a minute. Didn't people shoot up churches and synagogues this week? And who did that? White boys with guns. Get out and vote, because a lot of the shit in this country needs to change, and that's the only way it's going to happen. If you agree with that or disagree with that, I don't know how you can disagree with that, contact me through the website, thefwotshow.com. There's buttons for Facebook and Twitter and email, which is rob@thefwotshow.com. I make it easy. Contact me. Complain and say, Rob, I don't think any of that's true. Look it up. It's everywhere that, isn't owned by Fox. Anyway, while you're on the website, thefwotshow.com, go ahead and subscribe to the show through, let's say, iTunes or the Google Play Store or Blueberry or YouTube. It's all there. And go ahead and hit up the FWOT shop, or you can pick up a t-shirt or a poster or a phone case. Yeah, there's new stuff at the FWOT shop. Check it out. It's very cool. While I'm thinking about it, I'm going to bring this up too. Once you vote, make very sure that the machine you're using says that who you voted for really is who you voted for. Let me explain. Georgia has already had this happen. The ACLU is suing the state because a lot of people are voting for Stacey Abrams, and then when the screen comes up that says here's who you're voting for, it says Brian Kemp, and they said, hell no. Guess what? Not just Georgia, happening in Texas too. Beto O'Rourke people, keep an eye on things. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you with this one very, very important thing. Midterms are coming up next week. Get out and vote.